Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launch of the State of Food and Agriculture 2024. My name is Thin, and I'm a journalist specializing in food systems and climate change, and I'm delighted to be moderating this launch. First, let me just go through some housekeeping rules. Number one, the event is mostly in English, but we have simultaneous translations in the 6 UN languages. To access them, you just need to go to the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. Click on it and select the language that you want. Number two, this event will last 90 minutes, and we've set aside about 15 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions for the speakers, please post them in the chat box, and we'll try our best to get to as many of them as possible. And finally, we would very much like to encourage you to spread the word about this report. So please use the hashtags SOFA2024 and True Cost of Food. Now, the State of Food and Agriculture Report, or SOFA in short, is one of the flagship reports of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Last year's SOFA was the first to disaggregate the hidden costs of agri-food systems on our health, the environment, and society. It found that this cost was at least $10 trillion a year, or about $35 billion a day. That's equivalent to about 10% of the global GDP. It was a groundbreaking report, and this year's edition builds on that work and delves deeper into the true value of agri-food systems and how we can enhance them, starting with understanding the hidden costs. But what do we mean when we say hidden costs of our agri-food systems? Well, there's a growing recognition that how much we pay for food at the farmers' markets, at the grocery stores, and at restaurants don't really reflect the full range of costs and benefits associated with producing, distributing, and consuming these foods. Taking the hidden impacts into account will help us identify how we can transform our agri-food systems so that they deliver food that is both sustainable and healthy to everyone for generations to come. And of course, that transformation is urgently needed given the rising environmental, social, and health costs associated with our current agri-food systems. For example, we're seeing more frequent and more intense weather-related disasters, as well as a worrying increase in the number of people living with non-communicable diseases and micronutrient deficiencies as a result of poor diets. Now, which is why this year's report is focusing on how to transform our agri-food systems in a way that will enhance them, not just in monetary terms, but also for human and planetary health. It goes beyond identify the costs to look at a suite of possible solutions that we could implement. So today, you'll be hearing from the FAO's Agri-Food Economics and Policy Division on the findings of the latest report, followed by a panel discussion with speakers from all over the world who will be reflecting on the findings and how to move forward. But first, we have a short video about the report. Can we have the video, please?
Our agri-food systems provide immense value, feeding billions, supporting livelihoods, and driving economies around the world. However, in 2023, the annual FAO State of Food and Agriculture report revealed that globally, agri-food systems generated about $12 trillion in environmental, social, and health hidden costs. The State of Food and Agriculture 2024 report refines our understanding of these hidden costs for 153 countries, 99% of the world population. It analyzes hidden costs by categories of agri-food systems: protracted crisis, traditional, expanding, diversifying, formalizing, and industrial. Agri-food systems in protracted crisis bear the highest burden relative to their economies, with high environmental and social hidden costs. Social and environmental hidden costs are a burden also for traditional systems, but to a slightly lesser degree. the report finds industrial and diversifying agri-food systems account for the highest global quantified hidden costs, dominated by health hidden costs. In fact, health hidden costs associated with dietary patterns linked to non-communicable diseases make up 70% of all quantified global hidden costs. Specifically, the biggest global risk factors are low consumption of whole grains and fruit and overconsumption of sodium. In formalizing an industrial agri-food systems, unhealthy dietary patterns also include those high in processed and red meats. These findings make it clear that while agri-food systems provide immense value, they also come with hidden costs. To secure a better future, we need sustainable practices, decent incomes, and healthier food choices that fit to local realities. Everyone has a role to play. A farmer adopting sustainable practices, cooperatives generating employment and value in food processing, or consumers choosing to buy healthy and sustainably produced foods, all contribute to the larger goal. Institutions can harness their purchasing power alongside effective food and nutrition education. These actors need policies that set the right incentives to transform agri-food supply chains. These actions, by reducing hidden costs, will enhance the value provided by agri-food systems, contributing to the well-being of both people and planet.
Thank you for the video. We will hear more about the findings of the report later, but for now, let me invite Dr. Chu Dong-yu, Director General of the FAO, to provide welcoming remarks. Now, Dr. Chu couldn't be with us in person today, but he has this video message.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to launch the 2024 edition of the State of Food and Agriculture so far. This year's report focuses on how to increase the benefit that our agrifood systems provide. This report builds on the 2023 edition of the SOFIA report, in which we confirmed that the global hidden cost of agrifood systems existed $10 trillion. The results cover the environmentally hidden costs from the greenhouse gas emission, nitrogen emissions, blue water use, and land use change. Health hidden costs from the unhealthy dietary patterns, and social hidden costs from the poverty and the nourishment. The 2024 edition updates those cost estimates, divides them by the agrifood system types, and charts a course for the transformative change in our agrifood system. First, to understand what actions are needed this year, we refine our understanding of this cost, particularly in the health sector, which constitutes 70% of the global hidden costs. Addressing undernutrition and unhealthy dietary patterns is an important part of the transformation we need. Second, we note that the diversity of agrifood systems around the world, each facing unique challenges and requires targeted interventions. There is no single transformative strategy. Historically, agrifood systems have transitioned from the traditional to industrial, each with varied outcomes and hidden costs. For this reason, that the report explores how hidden costs manifest themselves in different agrifood system types worldwide. There is the burden of the non-communicated disease in formalizing an industrial agrifood system, but also the persistent challenges of poverty and nutrition in the traditional agrifood system. And in agrifood system experience protracted crisis, there are considerable environmental and social hidden costs, which touch the lives of people everywhere around the world, and we need context-specific solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, in the transformation of agrifood system, we need to ensure that we don't increase the power imbalances as well as environmental and social hidden costs. For example, agrifood system empower an estimated 1.23 billion people globally. Yet, despite their critical role in providing employment, they do not always ensure an acceptable standard of living and quality of life. And the challenges extend beyond wages. Producers who are on the front line of the impact of the climate crisis bears a significant share of the burden, where they facing challenges to adopt the sustainable practice. Mechanisms need to be put in place to ease the financing administrative burdens and to act as an incentive for transformation. Business and investors in agrifood systems also have critical roles to play. Agribusiness range from micro and small enterprises to global corporations, and their influence can drive sustainable practice across the supply chains. Finally, they are consumers, the largest group of the agrifood actors. Consumer demand for healthier, sustainable, and green production practices can be a significant driver of change across the agrifood supply chains. Opportunity exists to align consumer demand with environmental sustainability and healthier diets. For this, we need a combination of financing, tools, digital and educational programs, and regulations based on data and science. Ladies and gentlemen, this entrance point for action requires the efficient, effective, and coherent collaboration between the policymakers, producers, consumers, and the financial institutions. There is a need to ensure that the benefit and cost of the transformation are equitably distributed among the stakeholders in agro-food value chains. The SOFA report provides the country case studies to guide transformative policy actions and the investment in the individual countries in support of informed decision-making. SOFA highlights the need to bridge sectors divides along the policies across the health, agriculture, and environment. They ensure that the benefit and cost of change are equitably distributed, including across the generations. The choice we make now, the priorities we set, and the solution we implement will determine our shared future. Real change begins with individual actions and initiatives, supported by the enabling policies and targeted investment. The transformation of a global agrifood system is fundamental to achieving the SDGs and securing a prosperous future for all. I hope this report serves as a call to action for all of us and inspire our individuals and collective actions to ensure the four betters: better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life, leaving no one behind. I thank you.
Thank you very much to Dr. Chu for his remarks, which looks at a very much a holistic view, not just of the challenges, but also the possible solutions. I would now like to ask Andrea Catania, Senior Economist and the editor of the SOPA report at the Agri-Food Economics and Policy Division, to present the findings of.
Thank you, Tin. I will start sharing my screen. Please confirm that you see it.
Not yet.
Now?
Yes, now we can. Indeed,
Okay.
It's starting. Yes, we can see it. Thank you, Andrea.
again. So for those who just joined, the theme of this year's SOFA is value-driven transformation of agri-food systems. As demonstrated in last year's edition, the true costs of our food go far beyond the price we pay at the store. This year's report refines the analysis of these hidden costs, bringing them back into focus to drive action. Now, knowing the value of a hidden cost is really the first step towards reducing them. Because while hidden, these costs are very real. Someone is paying for them, either today or in the future. So SOFA 2023 revealed that in 2020, agri-food systems generated about 12 trillion US dollars in hidden costs. Now, the cost of inaction is sizable in all countries, with significant differences across. Now, this year, SOFA 2024 delves deeper, examining how these costs manifest across diverse agri-food systems worldwide, drawing on case studies and proposing solutions. As mentioned, the edition refines and updates the estimates, and it's pretty much confirmed that at a global level, these are 12 trillion US dollars, which is comparable to approximately 10% of global GDP. So globally, what we see is that the health-related costs, as mentioned also in the video and by the Director General, is that the hidden costs from unhealthy dietary patterns leading to increased non-communicable diseases such as heart disease and diabetes contribute to about 70% of the total. Environmental hidden costs, and these are costs related to greenhouse gas emissions, land use change, and nitrogen emissions, account for about 25%. And the social hidden costs, which are costs attributable to poverty among agri-food system workers and losses in productivity due to undernourishment, contribute 5%. Now, while these only make up 5%, they disproportionately affect economies of countries with more vulnerable agri-food systems, as we will see. Now, what is driving hidden costs and the burden each imposed on national economies differ by agri-food system type, which can be very different among countries even within the same income level. So the report focuses on developing a typology of agri-food systems to get a better sense of entry points. So we divide the agri-food systems into 6 categories, which kind of tries to capture components of food supply chains, diets, external drivers of food systems. We have the protracted crisis characterized by prolonged economic, climatic, or political crises, and often food insecurity. We have traditional agri-food systems characterized by a higher share of calories from staples, relatively low productivity in agriculture, short value chains, and still a relatively large rural population. And then, as socioeconomic conditions change in countries, their agri-food systems are likely to transform from traditional to industrial, with varying implications for hidden costs. And so industrials are more urban, longer value chains, for example, with also a higher share of supermarkets and higher productivity. So the transition between these categories can also highlight certain historical patterns that need to be avoided or leapfrogged. So this is not a transition necessarily that is always positive, and we have to rethink some way of kind of in which agri-food systems need to transform. So understanding where a country's agri-food system stands on this spectrum is essential to identifying both the drivers of hidden costs and the most effective strategies for addressing them. So by comparing the burden of these hidden costs placed on the different agri-food system types, we can better identify where action should be prioritized to address the most pressing challenges. What we see from this figure is that as a share of GDP, the hidden costs are significantly higher in countries with protracted crisis or traditional agri-food systems. For protracted crisis countries, they face a heavy burden of both environmental and social hidden costs, where we see the environmental ones are the one in green and the social are the one in orange. Now, this high burden reflects the severe disruption caused by prolonged instability and the vicious cycle between environmental and social hidden costs and conflict. Traditional agri-food systems, the second from the right side, are primarily challenged by social hidden costs, although environmental costs are also still substantial at 22% of GDP. Now, for the remaining agri-food system categories, going to the left, we see that expanding, diversifying, formalizing, and industrial agri-food systems, health hidden costs represent the greatest challenge. driven by unhealthy dietary patterns causing non-communicable diseases. Now, given that the most problematic hidden cost category is health for most countries, this report unpacks the dietary risks that drive these costs to identify policy entry points. And what we see is that diets low in whole grains and fruits and high in sodium are the leading dietary risk contributing to global health hidden costs. Specifically, diets low in whole grains contribute 18% of global quantified health hidden costs, followed by diets low in fruit, which add another 16%, and diets high in sodium accounting for 16%. Now, to reverse this trend, boosting the consumption of plant whole foods will be very important. However, the shift towards healthier diets will vary depending on each country's unique agri-food systems, consumption patterns, and local resources. This is why I'm now presenting different challenges posed by dietary risks in protracted crisis versus industrial agri-food systems. In protracted crisis countries, the top 3 dietary risks driving health hidden costs are low consumptions of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Similarly, in industrialized systems, low consumption of whole grains and fruits are among the top 3 dietary risks, but what is different is a high consumption of processed meat at 17%, leading in terms of impact on hidden costs. Notably, the hidden costs associated with processed and red meat consumption show an increasing pattern as countries transition towards more industrialized agri-food systems. So it is a kind of a bit of a linear tendency. These trends in hidden costs provide insights for policy aimed at avoiding the increase in health hidden costs traditionally observed along agri-food system transformation pathways. So in globally interconnected agri-food systems, the transformation pathways towards sustainability will need to be cognizant of the distributional challenges documented in this report. So given the plethora of pathways and actions to transform agri-food system towards SDGs, the focus is shifting from last year's, what are the costs, to how. That is, how to ensure that the benefits and costs of transformation are equitably distributed among stakeholders. If we are to succeed, that is a pretty strong prerequisite. So the report highlights several distributional challenges that may arise when attempting to address the hidden costs of agri-food systems, namely the complexity and length of value chains. This can make it difficult to pinpoint who is responsible for the hidden costs, often placing an unfair burden on specific stakeholders, such as, for example, smallholder primary producers. Then there are power imbalances. Powerful actors in the agri-food systems can externalize these costs, creating challenges for producers to shift towards more sustainable practices without adequate support. And we've seen protests around the world linked a little bit to this aspect. Temporal and spatial disparities. Some hidden costs have immediate and local effects, for example, such as water shortages, while others, like greenhouse gas emissions, are longer term and global. This misalignment creates a barrier to unified action, where the people who bear the cost may be, for example, in the future. And finally, governments and institutions. These must step in to support those most vulnerable, using mechanisms such as nutrition-sensitive social protection programs. One example also is intervening with the European Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, or public-private partnerships for financial inclusion that supports the cost of sustainable transitions for small-scale producers. Overall, these challenges highlight the need for stakeholder engagement. This comes out very strongly from this report. And the case studies included in the report provided targeted assessments with inclusive stakeholder consultations, essential to guide policies. Just to give you a sense of these studies, the Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture supported a TCA study tailored to national priorities. It provides the most detailed and advanced understanding of how a tailored true cost accounting assessment can complement existing national policies and sustainability commitments. So one of the most important enablers of this process is the existence of a national commitment to agri-food systems transformation with strong stakeholder engagement processes towards a vision for the future. And overall, that exercise that was carried out in Switzerland also validated the national true cost accounting results of last year's State of Food and Agriculture report and adapted them to their national needs with local data. We also had 6 other case studies where scenarios for desired outcomes to decrease hidden costs of agri-food systems were analyzed. So these studies covered Australia, Brazil, Colombia, Ethiopia, India, United Kingdom. And there were basically 3 scenarios were assessed for each country. One was low ambition, one was existing national commitments, and another one was a global sustainability scenario corresponding to efforts compatible with achieving global sustainability targets. And for most of the agri-food system studies in the industrial and formalizing categories in these case studies, changing dietary patterns is not only the main means of decreasing the hidden costs due to the burden of disease, but it's also a very effective way of reducing the environmental hidden costs due to greenhouse gases, nitrogen emissions, and land use change. Now, as seen throughout today's presentation and in the report, the hidden costs of agri-food systems across environmental, social, and health dimensions can only be addressed through strong stakeholder engagement and action by all agri-food system actors to address important distributional challenges. By uncovering these issues, the targeted true cost accounting assessments facilitate the identification and implementation of solutions that benefit everyone, from primary producers to consumers, and help inform a more inclusive, just agri-food system transformation. So everyone's roles matters, right? Starting from agri-food value chain actors, there's a need to improve the understanding of the hidden costs of their actions to ensure that these costs are acknowledged and addressed fairly. Coordinated action by producers, for example, through cooperatives, ESG, environmental, social, and governance reporting, and voluntary standards by agri-food businesses of all sizes, and better regulatory frameworks can also help redistribute costs and support sustainable practices. On the consumer and institutional side, we have that consumers and institutions with purchasing power, such as schools and hospitals, can really drive demand for sustainable products through multiple courses of action. Now here, more information is needed to be delivered to consumers on the environmental, social, and health costs of food choices. However, mechanisms like eco-labeling, consumer education, health-positive marketing can shift consumer behavior towards sustainability. And in this respect, institutional procurement programs can really use such information to reshape local food environments, as well as preference, both today's and in future generations. Finally, on the policy investment and civil society element and research, policymakers, investors, and civil society play a crucial role in setting the rules that govern agri-food systems. TCA can be incorporated into decision-making by these stakeholders to align priorities with sustainable, inclusive development goals. Financing mechanisms to support sustainable transitions, repurposing of agricultural supports, nutrition-sensitive social protection measures, and health-positive marketing are among the many courses of action highlighted in this report. So, to sum up, using a systemic approach to understanding the full costs and benefits of our agri-food systems, such as that afforded by TCA assessments, and harnessing the role of coordinated action involving primary producers, agribusinesses, governments, financial institutions, international organizations, and consumers is key to enhancing the value of agri-food systems and ensure the health of both people and the planet today and for generations to come. Thank you for listening, and we hope that this report starts to build the momentum and inspire all to take meaningful actions that will steer our agri-food systems towards sustainability.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for setting the scene brilliantly for the panel discussion. And of course, the findings are obviously concerning, but in a way, it is also encouraging how you and your team are able to track where the causes are, where these costs are, because, I think that will really help us to see where interventions can help. I would now like to introduce you to our speakers, who will be discussing how different actors in the agri-food systems could help drive a value-driven transformation towards sustainability. First, we have Her Excellency Christina Bende, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the FAO, His Excellency Marcel Buquebon, Chair of the True Value of Food Initiative and Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the FAO, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chairperson of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation from the Republic of India, Ms. Osporons Nzutsi, President of the National Confederation of Agricultural Producers of Congo and representative of the World Farmers Organization, and Ms. Victoria Crawford, Director, Agriculture and Food of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Now, I have 2 rounds of questions for the speakers before opening up for the Q&A. And I would like to request our speakers to keep their answers to a maximum of 3 minutes. Your Excellency Bende, may I start with you first? Now, this year's SOFA report underlines how important stakeholder consultations are to incorporate true cost accounting in policy making. So, Christina, could you share your perspective on how reflecting on the hidden costs of agri-food systems can actually inform how we do policy making and when it comes to policy issues?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to speak in French if it's okay with everybody.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for this question. I am pleased to answer it because Switzerland participated actively. As you said, Mr. Catignon, Switzerland participated in the production of SOFA 2023. Before starting, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to this roundtable. Of course, the presentation outlined the state of affairs. I'd like to thank the FAODG for focusing on the essential elements, not just the exercise, but what the exercise should lead to, the implementation of the consideration of elements related to the hidden costs of food. From our point of view, food systems bring several advantages, especially when it comes to, of course, food and food production, but also in regards to preserving landscapes, as well as many others. However, and this is the point of this meeting here, food systems do involve costs which are sometimes hidden or invisible, but they do have environmental, social and public health implications. So they do need to be taken into account so that these real costs can be assessed and their economic impacts can be assessed and quantified. This accounting, which is being proposed, can help us to look at food systems in a different way and propose more appropriate and different solutions. Switzerland is very proud to have participated in the production of SOFA 2023 and SOFA 2024, and we'd like to thank FAO for this excellent collaboration, especially with Mr. Cadeneo. And I'll speak a little bit about what we did in Switzerland following the collaboration with FAO. For this case study, we worked with scientists in a Swiss research institute, and we used SOFA 2023 as a basis to continue on with our Swiss research. We have a monitoring group and follow-up group made up of public health, nutrition, agriculture, and modeling experts, organized workshops to reach a common understanding of what the concepts are and modalities. The interpreter notes that we've lost the connection with the audio. We need to adapt SOFA to the Swiss context. We need this to be tailor-made for the Swiss case. This study is to be finalized soon, and it will soon be published. The aspects related to the process were also included in SOFA 2024. So I'd just like to note that SOFA 2023 is the basis that we have used to then analyze the hidden cost situation in Switzerland. The aspects that needed to be added to the Swiss context are many in number. They include the loss of biodiversity, AMR, animal well-being, soil quality, water scarcity. They needed to be added to reflect the local situation. We've tried to bridge some gaps that were identified in SOFA 2023. Information from existing studies. Some aspects do need to be looked at, though, because we weren't able to bridge all the gaps or fill all the gaps. When it comes to hidden costs, we also need to take into account interdependency. So the analysis of all food systems is indispensable in order to avoid missing things out and not taking into account all things that are in the chain. We have decided to take into account all the hidden costs and not just the biggest hidden costs. So we take into account the biggest costs and also even the smallest costs, so we can analyze the economic impacts. We also decided to look into the aspects underpinning, the assumptions underpinning all of this. So we need to make sure we have more healthy food systems, and so we look at the interdependency so we can reduce, for example, losses in production, greenhouse gases, and others as well. So the measures also need to be analyzed, not just the hidden costs, the measures to respond to the costs. We also have costs in relation to public health, as you can see in the SOFA report. And this is the same in the Swiss context. We also believe that it's necessary to put in place follow-up and monitoring tools and assessment tools to make sure that hidden costs don't become an even bigger problem moving forward. We hope we will be able to use all this to define more consistent public policies that will better respond to all the hidden costs in the agri-food systems. At a policy level, all of this work will require the awareness raising amongst the general public with the involvement of all the actors throughout the value chain. And in conclusion, I think we need to have an interdisciplinary approach, bringing together experts from the economy, health and environment and social domains, so that we can all develop better policies together to address the issue of hidden costs. Thank you very much indeed.
Merci, Christina. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences in Switzerland. We have a further question on the Swiss experience in the next round of questions, but we're going to move on and go next to His Excellency Birkebaum. Marcel, you are the chair of the True Value of Food Initiative. So we would like to hear from you insights on how multi-stakeholder collaborations can enhance the true value of food and also set the right incentives, right? Because, and for those who are not familiar, the True Value of Food Initiative was actually launched at the UN Food Systems Summit in 2021, and it was to focus specifically on accounting for these hidden benefits and costs of our agri-food systems. And Marcel?
Yeah, well, thank you. And good afternoon or good morning, everybody, wherever you are. I see there's many participants, so that is very good. Indeed, I'm the chair of the True Value of Food Initiative, which is a multi-stakeholder coalition that was founded around the Food Systems Summit. And you can imagine that with a coalition that was established to raise awareness for this theme, that I'm very excited. And you could almost think the work is finished now with 2 SOFA reports in a row on this subject and this topic, that the work is finished. But I would argue, on the contrary, the journey has just begun. And as you know, the UN Food Systems Summit was a summit about systems change. And when you talk systems, you talk about all stakeholders. So I'm grateful for the question about that, because our coalition was built around many stakeholders, but especially also about stakeholder collaboration. This is essential, and I think Andrea alluded to that as well in his presentation. When we talk about true value or true cost or hidden cost or true cost accounting, there are many definitions and many different methodologies associated with this. The work that has been done and looking through this lens gives you valuable insights in the actual hidden cost. And let me walk past a few of the stakeholders in any food system. And I will start with producers. If producers do have the right information about hidden costs, they can use that to transfer to more sustainable practices. And when you do that, first of all, your production becomes more sustainable, which is a goal in itself. But it could also help lowering costs, for example, by lowering pesticide use, lowering water usage, improve soil health, which of course will be better for production in the long run. So for producers, there is an incentive and an added value to have all this information available to make informed decisions. The second stakeholder in a food system is retailers. Retailers can benefit from having all this information at hand as well by making better sourcing decisions, which they can use to prioritize suppliers that have lower external costs, lower ecological footprints, and also maybe pay a better wage to their workers along the value chain, which makes me move to the third stakeholder in a food system, governments. And maybe I should have started with that, but it's governments do have an important role to play, as they are the regulators, but in this case they can also be the stimulators of sustainable practices. And by having all the right information at hand, they could strategically redirect subsidies, they could enact more supportive policies, or adjust regulations to establish a level playing field. And a level playing field is something that we do get back regularly as something that stalls or hampers the transition towards more sustainable food systems. And having all these hidden costs available and more transparent, it could help government make more informed decisions and actions as well. And then as a final stakeholder, and this is not a final and finite list, of course, but as an important stakeholder that could use this information as well, is the consumers. Knowing about hidden costs can, of course, empower individuals to make more informed choices, what they buy, what they eat. And we have seen in the presentation that we are not only talking about environmental costs, but also social health costs that would, of course, benefit individual health, but also lower costs for society when you talk about public health. And it can help consumers to align their purchasing decisions with values of sustainability and, of course, responsibility, which we know that consumers want if they are more aware about the effects of our food system to also the long-term health and sustainability of our society. So when all actors are equipped with transparent information, it allows the entire value chain to move towards a food system that is both equitable and sustainable. To finish, I would say we don't have to wait. First of all, these 2 SOFA reports give us a lot of information to act upon already, but we also don't have to wait for one single global standard. This is work in progress. We are working along the way, and I think Christina Bende referred to that as well from the practices in Switzerland. So there won't be a perfect system in which we have all the information available and all the right metrics. We have to do this as soon as we can, because our food systems can't wait. And actually, with the current technology, we can track and disclose true cost already, making it easier for stakeholders to see the impacts of their decisions. Again, back to the UN Food Systems Summit Coalition on the True Value of Food. We will continue, and hopefully also next year during the next stocktake of the Food Systems Summit, build on the momentum of the two SOFA reports and stimulate as many stakeholders as possible to make their own information transparent and available, but ultimately also to make decisions that help us move in the direction that I think we all want to move into. Back to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Marcel, and for sort of, laying out the key stakeholders, but also for your message that, we don't have to wait for a single perfect standard. We can already do something now. Soumya, can I turn to you next? Because, one of the most surprising findings, perhaps not for you, but I think for many people, with regards to the two consecutive SOFA reports, is the significance of the health hidden costs in all types of agri-food systems. So it would be great if you can talk about your experience in how agricultural and health professionals can sort of collaborate to make sure that agri-food system transformation not only addresses environmental and social hidden costs, but also health hidden costs. And if you could keep your answer to a maximum of 3 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Tin, and thank you also to FAO for having invited me to join this very fascinating discussion. You're right. I think the health folks, experts have known for a while now that dietary risks are the #1 risk to health globally. And what is very ironical is that when we talk about dietary risks, we're used to thinking traditionally about undernutrition and malnutrition and stunting, which still is a huge burden in the world today. But we also have two other risks, and that's obesity and the growing burden of non-communicable diseases as a result of that. And we have, at the same time, micronutrient deficiencies. And what you find in many countries around the world is that you have a combination of these three even within the same household. So you would have a child that's stunted, mother that's obese, and an adolescent girl who is anemic or suffers from other micronutrient deficiencies. So I think we've got to admit, first of all, that our food systems are not working for the majority of the world population. And some of your other reports that FAO and WHO and UNICEF have produced have shown that, for example, the cost of a healthy plate, a cost of a healthy diet, large parts of the world's population cannot afford a healthy diet. And this is exactly what this report is bringing out as well, that the lack of whole grains and legumes and nuts and the lack of fruits and vegetables, very importantly, and the overconsumption of salt, which is with increasing the consumption of processed foods, is impacting populations. And unfortunately, these all converge when we talk about low and middle income countries or developing countries, and the agri-food systems which are on the far right, the traditional and the one that is still in protracted crisis. So my feeling after listening to all of these data, and I must congratulate FAO for this excellent analysis and the two consecutive SOFA reports for highlighting the need, not just for health and agriculture to work together, but health, environment, and agriculture to work together. So essentially what we are talking about here is an all-of-government approach, to address this crisis, because we have on the one hand climate change, which is putting further pressure on agri-food systems. We have trade and marketing and all of those, the private sector that puts a lot of pressure on people's preferences and the way that diets are changing so rapidly. And then, of course, we have affordability of what we consider a healthy food. And so no one sector is going to be able to address all of these. And so we have to admit, first of all, that these sectors are not sitting together. And at least I haven't seen a serious discussion happening at the national or subnational levels where health, food, environment sit together and say, how can we address these issues, and perhaps our job is to make people aware now of this report, disseminate its findings. And then I would like to also say that at the global level also, we need a set of structural reforms, because I think our global food system is not delivering. I mean, this report is one more that adds to the volume of evidence. And so we need structural reforms across the agri-food system globally. And if I can just mention 4 governance reforms that we need. The first one is really to reorient action on the Agenda 2030 and enhance accountability and data-driven governance. We have many, many actors in this space, and we don't have unified governance. Neither do we have standard data systems that are measuring and monitoring the same thing so that we can all act on it. So that's number one, and we can go into more details later if you like. The second is that we need to deliver more on prevention. Clearly, our social security systems are not meeting the needs, and this gap clearly identifies that, particularly again in those countries which have protracted crisis or traditional systems. We need much stronger social security safety nets, and again, it's a global responsibility. The third is to look at food as a global public good to ensure that unfair trade practices, for example, the discussions at the WTO, there's discussions happening at COP, all of these need to consider food as a global public good, and therefore look at where investments in R&D, investments, in systems that would enable better access to nutritious food can be discussed just as we would discuss access to vaccines or other life-saving health products. And finally, we need to manage future needs through anticipatory approaches. And I think we're not doing enough of that. Again, this has to be a collective global effort where the National Agricultural Research Agency, the CGIAR system, for example, would play a very important role, but sort of coming together and we don't see that kind of a global agreement on here's the crisis and this is what we need to do to move forward. So I hope that this webinar can galvanize some of that thinking and action.
Thank you so much, Sumya. Very important points about being siloed still particularly at national and subnational levels, and very concrete recommendations as well on what could be done to improve the situation. I'm now going to turn to Esperance. Esperance, as I'm sure you yourself are experiencing at the moment, farmers are on the forefront of agri-food systems transformation, right? But they face multiple constraints, not least the poverty and undernourishment, particularly of small-scale farmers. It would be great if you could talk about any examples of policy or investment interventions that have worked well to address these challenges.
Merci beaucoup par rapport.
Thank you very much for this question. I'd like to start by thanking the organizers and thank them for the invitation to participate. I'm the president of the National Confederation of Agricultural Producers of Congo, CONAPAC. We are a confederation that brings together smallholders and farmers from different parts of the country and various federations. So we all come together in CONAPAC. I come from a village where I started my organization. I've been working in this area for 30 years with this confederation. Now, to answer your question, I think the policy of my country is not at all favorable when it comes to the development of smallholder farmers. I think we need to work a lot on the policies in our countries. Our policies are not the same, and we also see that there are actions that are carried out which aren't necessarily appropriate either. We have policies that come from the colonial period. We need to support farmers. We need to have an agriculture law. We have an agriculture law in our country which hasn't been validated yet. So we need to continue on with this process of improving the agriculture policy in Congo. We have this network that we have in place. We think that today, for the food system to be sustainable, these policies need to be known about widely. We have this free trade area. I mean, this is the problem, because when the policies don't gel well together, we all work in different ways, and smallholder farmers, with what's happening at the moment, they find it difficult to sell their products because everything that's in the policy clashes with what happens in different countries. So on your question on policies, I think a lot of work still remains to be done. We have many steps that need to be undertaken. We also need exchanges of experience, and we also need to talk about training, as my colleague just mentioned. Training is the best way to go about things, because when people are well trained, then they can better implement policies and actions. I think much work needs to be done as well on agroecology. We know, and we have known for generations, that we have had ways of farming that have worked. But we ask now, why do we have the destruction of the environment today? I think that the best way to have agroecology is to go to family farming. So we have to look at all of the approaches, but I think it's important to start with identifying the knowledge that has existed in our communities, that has protected our communities and our environment and ensured that we've had healthy food in the past. We need to look at our seeds. For example, we need to look at the good seeds that existed in the past, the ones that were resistant, for example, and resilient. It's very important to look at those things. Today, the world is polluted, but we don't ask ourselves why it is so. I think for me, as a representative of smallholder farmers, we need to work on identifying knowledge and tapping into this knowledge. This knowledge is out there, but we need to make sure that it can be adapted to the modern day. We need to work on all of these areas. I think we also need to look at the products that we have and the value that can be added in our products. We need to look at how we can conserve our products, because at the moment we have problems related to losses. We also need to have a framework for consultation, because we have a farmer who might say, I've got a product to sell, but prices are imposed by a big company on us. And so we are often working with people higher up in the chain to us, but we need to focus on the inputs, as it were, into this system, and that's us, the farmers. In my country, we see that the cost of production is not the same between someone who works or farms with a hoe and someone who farms or works with sophisticated farm machinery. So that's something we also need to look at. We need to support policies, and this involves looking at all the different countries. We need to take stock of what is being done in all of the countries, our country and neighboring countries. And then we need to see that we have problems, For example, in my country, I produce one product, but producers in another country like Angola or another neighboring country produce the same thing, and that comes into our country. That's something that also needs to looked at. I think we really do need to address the issue of seeds, as I mentioned earlier, because this can make sure that we can have high quality food to feed the world. Because what we're eating now is not good food. It's making us sick. So I advise all partners that are following this meeting today, we need to work on seeds. We need to work with the seeds, the right seeds. We can sell them, we can use them to grow our products, but we need to resolve a lot of issues. Trade needs to be addressed. And we need to look especially at land tenure, because everything related to land tenure is very important. It needs to be worked on because tenure policies, for example, in my country, none of that has been validated. So I think we need to work on land tenure policy, which is adapted because our ancestors did not have to deal with these issues. We do need to work on these land tenure issues to avoid conflicts, and we need to look at how we're going to work together in the world we are in today, a very much interconnected world, but we are not all at the same level. We need to take stock of the situation that we're in now. We need to see how each level can adapt and how we can come together. If we just have a general policy, I think we'll always have difficulties. Because when I was seeing in Rome, I met with friends and other people. I saw and heard about how they work. We need to avoid a situation in which some people go ahead and other people fall behind. That's all I can share with you as a farmer. We face many problems, of course, but I think I answered your question. I hope I answered your question. But if you do have anything to come back on, I'd be happy to answer that.
Merci, Esperanza, for your very impassioned speech and emphasizing, on the importance of indigenous knowledge and the power imbalances that Dr. Chu also mentioned in his speech. Now, last but definitely not the least, Victoria, we're turning to you because the SOFA 2024 reports actually highlights many roles that agribusinesses can play in shaping agri-food systems. It'd be great to hear from you some of the examples of, existing initiatives that support sustainable agri-food systems transformation. And if you could also talk a little bit about what are the main enablers of success and what were the main challenges.
Yes, great. And thank you for having me here today. So just as a quick introduction, WBCSD, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, is a business membership organization. We work with around 70 companies, primarily large multinationals in the food and agriculture space, and support them to deliver on sustainability goals, covering climate, nature, inequality, and food and nutrition security. I think what we've heard from the panel today is this huge need to address the hidden costs of the food system, to drive a systemic level change across all of these different dimensions, And that something critical that we've heard from the previous panelists is that the costs and the risks must be shared. They cannot fall disproportionately on frontline communities, farmers and indigenous communities. We've also heard about the important role that a wide range of different stakeholders have to play, and what I can share is about the specific roles of business in that within that wider space. So our analysis conducted with the Food and Land Use Commission and We Mean Business highlights that if agribusinesses commit $205 billion a year, we could halve food system emissions by 2030. So this is a huge amount of investment, but it shows that this is technically possible with the right will from across all the different stakeholders. And our members are both making commitments and taking action to transform their supply chains in line with climate, nature, inequality, livelihoods, and food and nutrition security goals. One example that I'd like to point to is the Action Agenda on Regenerative Landscapes, which we launched with the COP presidency, BCG, and the high-level champions at COP28. And which brings together 30 plus organizations within the food and agriculture space to work together in transforming food systems towards regenerative landscapes. We're currently updating the statistics, but as of COP28, this group of organizations had committed $2.2 billion, reaching 3.6 million farmers across 160 million hectares of land. And what we really have now is the world's most comprehensive map of commitments to regenerative landscapes, which we are using to help broker partnerships to scale action, to share knowledge, develop guidance, and knowledge products. And we've actually just launched our first landscape accelerator program focused on the Cerrado in Brazil. And so that's an example of a wide range of companies working together to drive change. And then a kind of complementary piece of work is our work on regenerative agriculture metrics. So if we want to see strong business action on regenerative agriculture, we need to be clear about what are the outcomes that we're working towards and how do we measure and report against that. This is both to unlock action and also strengthen accountability. So over the past 2 years, we've been working with 52 companies as well as 30 plus business focused organizations to align on outcome areas and income and indicators under those, which are aligned with key sustainability frameworks, aligned with the SDGs and with planetary boundaries. And this will enable businesses to integrate regenerative agriculture considerations, covering the full range of impact areas. So both the environmental areas, climate, biodiversity, soil health, water, but also the socioeconomic dimensions as well. And this enables these to be taken into account in business decision making. So that's kind of two examples of how companies are working together to drive the transition. And if I can speak to the second half of the question, which was about the enablers and challenges to these types of efforts. One piece I wanted to highlight was the importance of the political environment that companies are working within. If we, for like one of the kind of big threats to business action is around the politics in this space, and we really need to see high ambition food system policies, whether that's food targets in NDCs and MBSAPs and other national strategies, but also wider support. Where we have anti-ESG backlash, where we're seeing farmer protests challenging some of the sustainability movement, this makes it a really difficult operating environment for businesses. The second piece, and I think this kind of resonates with what we've heard from across the panel, is the need for better collaboration. We need more investment in partnerships, in high quality dialogues between business and other stakeholders, whether that's multinational businesses and farmer groups and indigenous groups coming together to align on priorities, as well as strengthen forms of public-private collaboration, really like businesses and governments working together to co-design solutions that are applicable, practical, and really meet the needs of multiple stakeholders. And then the third piece I wanted to highlight is about needing incentive systems to line up. We really need to see policies helping encourage businesses to move in the right direction. So, for example, drawing on the regenerative agriculture metrics work that I highlighted, what we'd like to see next is that standards and regulations align around the same areas that businesses are being encouraged from all angles across all countries in the same direction. The level of ambition, the specific targets may vary depending on context, but these need to be applied based on like the specific needs of certain contexts. But making sure that we're using the same measuring system is really key to unlocking business action. And then perhaps another example on the policy side is around subsidies. So we've heard from the initial presentation about repurposing subsidies being one of the areas to unlock action. And I think here is to reflect that the incentives that subsidies are providing to producers need to align with the direction that we want to see business moving as well. Or otherwise it just makes it really challenging to really drive the change through their supply chains that we're looking to see. So overall, businesses are taking action, but we recognise this needs to be a collaboration with all stakeholder groups and for policy incentives to align with sustainability goals.
Great, thank you so much, Victoria. Definitely hear your message around, sharing the risks and responsibilities and collaborating and making sure that, it all aligns, including the political economy. Now, we have quite a lot of questions that are already coming, but I would really like to give the opportunity to our speakers to provide us with a very short takeaway, either on the findings or the future actions that they would like to see before we open the floor for Q&A. So speakers, if you could keep your answers to a couple of sentences maximum. I know I'm asking a lot, but if you could do that, that would be perfect. Sumya, can I start with you first? Brief takeaway, a couple of sentences.
Yes, so I think that it's very clear that food is essential for life and for health. And if we don't get the nourishment that we need from our food, then, everything else is going to not work out well. We know from the pandemic that when our health is impacted, then of course the global economy takes a very big hit. And so I think that link between agriculture, food systems, nutrition, and health needs to be given a much higher priority at the level of both national governments as well as regional bodies, and which actually can do a lot. I think the regional groupings are also equally important. And then, of course, you need at the global level. So I think just elevating this discourse, pointing out that we seem to be heading in completely the wrong direction, and that is actually impacting human health. And thirdly, providing very practical solutions, like we have a table, which lists all the different levers that could be used at the different, levels of the food system to actually have a positive impact. So as previous speakers have said, it's also about aligning incentives, removing perverse incentives and so on. But for that, I think the issue that we often face is the trade-offs and the fact that when someone benefits, someone often loses, and that's often not taken into account and may account for the uprising and the anger that then arises. So having wide-holding consultations to ensure that we take people along and that we are being fair to all parts of the population is going to be important.
Thank you so much, Soumya. Marcel, can I come to you next? A brief takeaway, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I will be very brief. Above anything else, I think true cost accounting or true value of food is a way of looking at our food systems, a holistic view. And the beauty of this is that once you see it, you cannot unsee it anymore. So what I just wanted to say is thank you, FAO, and thank you, SOFA team, for opening our eyes. And let's get to work.
Thank you very much. Esperance, can I ask you to go next very briefly, please?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I think that to summarize what I can say in terms of policies, we need our governments to have policies for agriculture that are really agreed on and harmonized so that people can really understand the policies, and they need to be adapted to the different contexts in a way that the smallholder farmers can work and work in an agroecology system and work in sustainable agriculture. If the good policy framework is in place, I think that that can be extremely important. Good policies, well coordinated, can really help promote agriculture. There can be room for all, small farmers and larger farmers, and also food processing, producers of machinery. Everyone can come together and work. We need to work in synergy, and that is very important in a system. Not thinking that one side has to win over the other. We can work together. And I would like to thank FAO for this conference. And it's important that FAO continues to support us, small farmers in different countries, and hear the opinions of different countries. And I think that this support can help promote sustainable development for all, small-scale farms and larger farms. And that's what I wanted to say based on my experience. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Christina, can I come to you next? A brief takeaways, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I think that we could conclude with the words of Espérance Noussi. Of course, we have the ambition of making use of FAO's excellent work, refining it to fit our Swiss example, and develop a new policy, not agriculture policy in 2027, but agri-food system policy for Switzerland. And this would have more of an impact on the entire value chain of agriculture and production. And as was said by Marcel from the Netherlands, once you've opened up this toolbox, you have to really look at the outcomes and understand the entire chain. I also appreciate very much the questions that were in the chat on subsidies, on imports. All of this has to fit into what needs to be a holistic approach. In a country like Switzerland, this requires a multi-stakeholder, multi-party approach. And that was said very clearly also by Espérance. It's important that all stakeholders take part in the debate and help shape these policies that will benefit all. So once again, thank you, FAO.
Merci. Victoria, I'm so sorry for coming to you last again, but if we can have some brief takeaways from you, that would be great.
Yeah, so what the SOFA analysis really reiterates is the importance and the urgency of transforming our food systems. What my takeaway is from this discussion is that the solutions sit in better forms of collaboration. It really needs to be a joint multi-stakeholder effort in order to address the systemic challenges, whether that's the broader policy environment, whether that's around better sharing of knowledge, fair use, the critical need to share fairly the costs and risks across all of the stakeholders in the food system. And if we're seeing that the solutions are around collaboration, then we need to be investing in processes that enable better collaboration. This is a concerted efforts to facilitate dialogues, partnerships, joint forms of innovation between different groups.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. We have quite a lot of questions actually. And again, thank you, like Christina said just now, it's great to see, everybody engaging in the chat box with answering the questions that are coming through. But there are also quite a lot that have not been answered. Andrea, can I bring you in, please? Because there are lots of questions around some of the details on the findings of the SOFA report, the methodologies, and even the way some of the findings are presented. For example, the hidden costs as a share of GDP. There's a question around that, and there are other multiple questions. So would you like me to read out the questions, or are you already quite familiar with some of the questions, and are you going to launch into the answers directly? Let me know what would be best to help drive the conversation.
I think it's probably best to go directly in, since
Great, go ahead.
we don't have much time.
Great, please.
I'll start with the one on the question was about why we present the hidden cost as a share of GDP, and whether it means that we should focus efforts in reducing percentage of hidden costs as a share of GDP, so focusing on countries that face protracted crises. And this is a very good question. I mean, we present results both in monetary terms and as a share of GDP. We tend to privilege the share of GDP because it shows a burden on a specific country. So it's how important that problem is. So it conveys more information to policymakers. Now, at the global level, we come up with a dollar estimate, so we have that also at the national level. But we feel that for national policymakers, that is a little bit more useful. So it's not an expression of what country we should focus on. Each country should focus on the problems at hand. It does say something about how daunting it is to solve those problems. Now, another question that came up is about diversifying agri-food systems. We have these 6 categories. So what is the diversifying one? And this is a little bit of a transition from traditional to industrial. So it's a little bit midway in terms of the level of urbanization, the proportion of food that comes from staples. It's kind of a little bit above the average, the global average in terms of food that comes from staples. So it shows that the diet is diversifying. So that's essentially the name that goes with it is urbanization is increasing. And so that's what is there. In terms of other, thankfully, Christina answered the questions that were related to Switzerland. She pulled me out of that kind of difficulty. In terms of repurposing subsidies and where we look at agrochemicals, there have been studies that look at repurposing subsidies and how these might affect different hidden costs. We don't report them specifically. A little bit in the report, but we didn't do new analysis for that. And in terms of the agrochemicals, impacts of pesticides are not included, but impacts of fertilizers are through nitrogen emissions into the environment. On that note, I think I will stop here because I know that we have the takeaway messages from the chief economist. And so I'm sorry if we can't answer all the questions. We'll try to answer them a little bit in the chat. Over.
Great. Thank you so much for taking all of that on, Andrea. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I think we could go on for hours, but unfortunately we are running out of time, like Andrea said, and we are going to have a takeaway as well. So we're going to have to close the panel discussion. Can we give a virtual round of applause to all of our speakers for their insights, please? And now for the last part of today's event, I'm going to invite Mr. Maximo Torero Colon, FAO Chief Economist, to sum up the discussion and also to outline the next steps going forward. Maximo?
Thank you so much. And thank you to all. A special thanks to the panelists, our great esteemed panelists, and to the SOFA team for the hard work to make this second report a reality. As you all know, this is the first time ever we do two SOFAs on the same topic. And I think it has been a great experience and a lot to do, and a lot still to do. So summarizing such a rich discussion in just a few key points is not easy task, but I will do my best. But before that, I think it's important to say that we still, I think, not totally realize how transformative this work is and how it will be if we do it properly and continue working on this. Really, my hope and my belief and why we make this decision to do two consecutive SOFAs is that it's not only normative, but it also will have significant implications on the transformation of our agri-food systems. So for me, we need to keep pushing and raising the importance of this work and trying to see how we can really move this forward to an implementation phase. As I review all the notes based on what you have taken, I have a few themes that I want to highlight and to stand out. So first, a challenge. This SOFA report confirms last year's findings that hidden costs of agri-food systems are a challenge everywhere and makes the case for a coordinated effort. We heard in the presentation that the hidden costs likely amount to around $12 trillion, which is equivalent to 10% of the global GDP. Addressing these hidden costs can only happen by engaging the different stakeholders of our agri-food systems, as Marcel mentioned, producers, agribusiness, governments, financial institutions, private sector, and consumers. And I am grateful that the panelists share their views from this different perspective. Bringing this perspective forward in a coordinated manner is key to ensure agri-food systems provide sustainably produced, nutritious food for all now and for the generations to come, what we call, and our motto, of good food for all for today and tomorrow. Second, heterogeneity. The report acknowledges the different and distinct agri-food systems categories which face unique challenges. And to do so, this report analyzes results through a lens of different agri-food system types. And this is one way to do it. There could be many more types, but I think it gives us an idea of the differences that we have, like the graph shown in the presentation comparing the countries in protracted crisis with in the industrialized cases. One aspect that struck me is that countries and territories in protracted crisis, one of 6 categories, bear the greatest burden of hidden costs, particularly environmental and social costs. These costs are comparable to 47% of average GDP of countries in protracted crisis. Improving how these agri-food systems function can deliver huge benefits. Now, this is related to one of the answers provided by Andrea, and we need to understand that some of the costs are local, with local consequences, and that will be the case of social costs, and the case of the health costs, because they affect directly the human capital of the country. But others are global, and this is clearly the case of the environmental costs. And what we are observing in these protected crisis countries is that internally the environmental cost is a significant share of the GDP, but in absolute levels will be a small amount relative to the global impact. But also what is inherent is that we are looking at environmental costs today, which are a consequence of what has happened also in the past. So looking into stocks of emissions, for example, could be a good way to look forward on how we can implement policies which are more balanced across the different income levels of countries in the world. This diversity, of course, will require tailored agri-food system transformation strategies with interventions that address the specific needs and characteristics of each agri-food system type. Third, health. This report rightly highlights the importance to address the health hidden costs, which account for 70% of the total hidden cost. To do so, it further breaks these costs down into 13 specific dietary risk factors to enable countries to build more targeted and effective policy interventions. We saw that low consumption of whole grains and fruits and high intake of sodium are the leading dietary risks related to non-communicable diseases at global level. As such, they stand as a present challenge that we must confront. However, the composition of the risk factors varies across agri-food system types, As we saw, protected crises and traditional agri-food systems face very different health challenges from formalizing and industrial ones. And this also opens us a box and a direct link to what we're trying to do with the roadmap of SDG 2 without reaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius. This diversity shows once again that solutions need to be tailored to the problem at hand. Fourth, how, and most importantly, the report focuses on the how to enhance the value of agri-food systems to society. The panel discussion has discussed and highlighted this a lot. As already mentioned, the report stresses that delivering more value to society requires coordinated action involving producers, agribusinesses, governments, and financial institutions, private sector, and consumers. The challenges in addressing hidden costs is that this can result in uneven impacts across stakeholders, countries, and timeframes. And again, it's important to separate what is a public damage to a public good and what is a localized damage because of these hidden costs. The report outlines how supportive policies and regulations can help to minimize disruptions, particularly for small-scale producers and agribusinesses. It proposes a number of entry points of action based on a set of case studies. And in this respect, I would like to highlight the potential of harnessing the purchasing power of food procurement through institutions to reshape food supply and improve food environments. Fifth, data and tracking progress will be extremely useful. We need to see how things evolve over time and how these hidden costs evolve over time. I hope they will be reduced over time. And that's something that we can only do if we track this properly with data. And that's an investment that FAO will have to make a decision if we can continue updating these numbers in the future. And it, of course, will depend on the decision of our members. 6, actions of today have a consequence tomorrow. And as it was mentioned by one of you, the journey just began. Because what is important here is the last mile. So we have started to open this box and bring in all this light on the size, magnitudes, and differences across different countries, depending on the evolution of the agri-food systems, of what these costs are. Now, the issue is how we can convert this into action that will influence by actor, producers, agribusinesses, consumers, and we can gain efficiency and sustainability. For example, in the case of producers, how we can start to bring these results into the training and extension services so that we can use our inputs more efficiently to minimize the potential externalities. To the government, how we can present to them the importance of the intertemporality of these issues. That what they do today and the support they provide today, or the subsidies they provide today, could have an impact tomorrow. And if they don't resolve it today, that will increase their cost in the future and will affect their own economies. So the intertemporality will play a crucial role, and that's something that we need to bring up and try to work with governments to try to change the way of thinking only of today, but not thinking on tomorrow. And not understanding that how we act today will also affect our tomorrow. Private sector, the same way. We need to start bringing more responsibility and trying to make them understand what are the consequences of their actions. You know, the agri-food system is a sector that depletes. It's a sector that affects our nature. It's a sector that affects our environment. And we need to internalize those costs in the way we operate. This is like an investment. We do an investment and we damage something, we have to have a fund to be able to recover what we damage. So I think it's really important to bring this logic of the life cycle of our actions to the projects that we do and the investments that we do so that we can behave more responsible in terms of our investments. And finally, of course, consumers and the health issues and the non-communicable diseases, because their choices today will affect their future tomorrow. Yes, of course, this will also create a cost to the society and a cost to the social security and a cost to the governments as a consequence. But also will create a cost to your lives and how you will evolve in the future. And this has an impact on labor productivity for sure. So trying to change behavior is also another action that we can start moving based on what we are observing in this work. The second dimension is to look by typology, because we need to capture heterogeneity. And that requires us to look at what Switzerland is doing in their case study and trying to see how we can scale this up. If there is an avenue in which we can work with other countries and other types of countries to start showing the power of this information in capturing also this diversity and heterogeneity, because this will also affect the way we act today to impact the tomorrow and will affect the policies we do. Colleagues, this has been an extremely useful meeting and launch and panel. And to conclude, for me, the takeaway message for moving forward is that it is possible, through targeted actions, to enhance the value of agri-food systems for society, both today and for the future generations. However, we will need stakeholder engagement to discuss trade-offs that this will be taken over and will be implemented. It will be not simple, but the ideas in the report and those I heard from our panelists will help us chart the way forward, finding solutions that are tailored to the local context. Our motto, I think, is crucial on the work that has been done here. Good food for all for today and tomorrow. But we need to act today so that we can have that better tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Massimo, for the conclusion and for, summing up, like what you said, a very rich discussion, but not an easy task. And with that, we have come to the end of today's event. I would like to again thank all of our speakers for their insights, the SOFA team for their groundbreaking work, and of course, you for attending to this launch. Have a great rest of the day and weekend. Thank you very much for joining us.